She's wondering if you have a plant that won't grow, if that might be affected. More than likely, it's in a geopathic line. Trees grow very, very well in geopathic lines, but if you have one going through your garden, everything in that line it'll never grow. It just won't grow. So my parents' house have a huge, ridiculously huge pine tree, and in their front yard, opposite of it, they have this little stunted thing. So it was super funny. It's because the one is in a geopathic line and the other one is not. So yep, if you have some issues in your gardens and stuff.
Patches of grass in the sun that.
Yep.
And you don't have a dog.
Yep.
Maybe my kids pee in there. You've met
and it could be. And it could be honestly, Laura, it could also be a negative vortex. Wes had a house for sale or for rent, and we went and doused it. And I said, I got to do some work in the yard. And I went out and there's some patches of grass, and I was like, I got to check that. And sure enough, it was negative vortexes. And it was really cool after that because he'd been trying to rent the place for 3 months, and he couldn't get any renters. And I doused it, and he had new renters by the next week. And they're good renters. He said they pay their rent, so that's always good. But that's something too, if you own property that you rent out to attract better quality people to rent your space. If you douse it, raise up the energy. Raise up the energy so the people that are attracted are at that same frequency. You can do it in businesses. I have doused several businesses. I just did an insurance office in town, and they ended up having some person leave. And she called me, she goes, I'm so glad we didn't have to fire her. And it's like, no, she just couldn't handle the energy, so they leave on their own. So sometimes when you douse, you will have a little chaos come up, but it takes care of itself.
That one at 8, it was bees. There was bees underground. My grandfather was allergic to bees, and when he pulled the root out, bees got him, stung him everywhere. And they found that there was batches and batches of bees underground on our farm, and the dowser came out and emptied every bee on the place.
Yeah.
They don't like
positive energy. Yeah. Yeah.
They're very energetic. Bees are. They contain a lot of energy, but they don't like dowsing. So that's what that was. It was too.
So they got rid of it. Well, and the other thing, if you have ants in your house, ants travel on geopathic lines. My mom and dad used to get those big black huge ants in their bathroom, and after I doused their house and cured the geopathic line right outside their bathroom, they have not had trouble since with those black ants. So sometimes if you have critters in your house, that's part of it too. So I doused a house, one of my first houses I doused in Park Rapids, which is a really heavy energetic spot around here. I walked into this woman's house, no one was home. She said, just go ahead and douse it. And her basement was just like 8-foot dirt hole. And I stood at the top and I was like, I'm not going in there. There's no way I'm going under there. And I just heard this little voice, or big voice I should say, and I have this great Native American guide that helps me. And he's like, you are going in there. This is your job now and you will do this. And I was like, okay. And she had 6 negative vortexes in this tiny little spot. And I doused it and I cleared up the energy. It was like you could see so much difference. And at the time I did not know not to do that quite as quickly. It was one of my first, so it was definitely a learning experience. But the husband came home and I didn't even know this woman was married. Like, I had no feeling that she had a partner. And he walked in and it was like I could just see the ick around him. And he was so charming and good looking, and just, I was just like, I gotta get out of here right now. And I left, and that weekend, and again, I have learned, I don't do this anymore to people, this poor woman, she called me, and she wanted to burn everything he had ever touched. She wanted to get rid of him, she wanted to get rid of all his clothes, she wanted him out of her house, and it was almost like I could see this fog lift where she could really see him. And since then, she's divorced him, she's got him out of her house, she's completely cleared up her house, and her house is basically falling down. But the changes in the 2 years since I've met this woman are amazing, because she could never see him. The energy was just, she couldn't see him. Which brings up another part of the dowsing experience for me. When I douse people's homes, a lot of past lives and a lot of karma comes up. I've had a couple clients that cry the whole time I'm dowsing, because all these different things are coming up. There was a woman farther south in Fargo, and she, as soon as I started dowsing, I walked in the door and she started to cry. And she's like, how is this? And I'm like, it's okay. I said, this might be kind of intense for you. I felt it just even driving out here. And I said, when you moved into this house, did you feel really pulled to it? And she's like, I had to live here. I had to live here. And it came up through just different things that I saw and felt and things that she said, because she's very intuitive. She had lived there in a past life. She had given birth to 2 children, which she has now. Both of her children had died, and she had buried them on that spot. And she had a little off side of her house that was like her sunny porch type thing. And I said, what's your favorite room in the house? And she said, right there. And I said, when you close your eyes and just think about that spot, what do you see? And I had seen a log cabin, like where she probably used to live. And she just sat and she cried and cried and she cried. This poor girl just cried the whole time. And she goes, I lived there. And I said, you did. And so sometimes we get into the karmic stuff with relationships, money, all the biggies. My husband and I have dealt with a lot of money karma. And after my house was doused, we were having a really hard time. He had lost his job. I had lost my job. It was just ridiculous. But I knew I had to get my house doused, so I doused it. And about 30 days later, we were still struggling, and we were way behind on our electricity bill. And they called and they said, if you don't pay today, your electricity is getting turned off. And I, of course, was mortified. I'm like, oh my God, I'm 35 years old and I can't even pay my bills. I started a business. What am I doing? I went into that whole thing. And somehow we pulled this $600 out of our butts, got it paid. I went to a friend's house. I don't think she's here. Had a pity party, had a drink. Went back home, and my husband was going through things in the office. And I had just had a conversation with Annette. And I was like, what the hell is going on? You told me this was going to get better. I don't understand why this is all happening. And he opened a check he had forgotten about for the exact amount that we owed on the electricity bill. And for some reason, that's all it took, and I completely believed in all of this. It's taken us some time to get through it, so dowsing is not going to cure all your problems, but it's going to get you to the point that you can start seeing opportunities and possibilities and clear out a lot of the old junk that you need to get rid of to move on and go next and wherever you're going on your path. Sometimes it shifts people onto a totally...
So I'm living in a house on the river, and it's going to be taken out and torn down.
Yep.
And so how do you figure out where you are and where you're going?
Have you found a new place yet?
Absolutely not.
You don't want it either, do you?
No.
No. Talk to me afterwards.
It's kind of upsetting.
I'd have to kind of tune into you a little bit and see, because it's what I see right now is like you are holding on so hard with all your grips because it's such a beautiful place.
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
You know, it's a stunning place, and I know that it's got to go, and it knows it's got to go.
Yeah, it does.
It knows,
it does.
It knows its time has come.
But you're taking a new step up, though. It's like you're stepping into, like, so I see shoes a lot, which is funny when I'm talking to people and there's moving in, like I see white disco boots. Which really makes sense with what you do in the dancing. But you're stepping in and you're zipping them up and it's time to move, and for some reason...
They're your boogie shoes.
Yeah, they're your boogie shoes. And it's just time.
These boots are made for walking.
It's just time, and just really get into that place of trust that your next space...
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you know where
it's going to just show up for you.
Shows up?
For you, it's just going to show up.
As soon as you're willing to see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of got to let go a little bit. Yeah. Have a really, really good conversation with your house.
Say your goodbyes.
Say your goodbyes.
I have been.
Yeah, write
I've
it.
been on a daily
Feels like you
basis.
need a journal.
Yeah.
Like you need to put that on paper and anchor it.
It almost sounds like you're grieving.
Yeah. Yeah. But you get to grieve with your house, which is kind of interesting.
It is.
Yeah. And I think you wouldn't have had it any other way.
What?
What if you write your house a letter about how grateful you are to it?
I walk around telling it that.
Yep, there's something about putting it on paper.
Beautiful.
Yep, there's something about putting it on paper and anchoring that energy, because right now the energy is still just going around and around. You need to anchor it to something.